Hi everyone, welcome to the 10th day of our 60 days video series on statistics for data science. In this video series, so far guys, we have covered the descriptive statistical analysis where we looked at to understand the distribution of any particular variable, what kind of measures which are available in descriptive statistical analysis. Like we talked about mean, median, mode, standard deviation, variance, skewness, kurtosis, all the three different type of statistical measures we have discussed. Now, a part of these measures, if you want to understand the distribution, we use one graphical technique, that is histogram, guys. Right? So histogram as well as density plot, we have already seen in this particular series. So if you have not watched those videos, guys, please go and watch them so that you understand this particular video. Now, in this video, guys, I am going to introduce another very popular chart which we use to understand the distribution of variables. And this particular chart is very popular, guys, in the industry to understand whether we have outliers in our data or variable or not. Right? So that is why from the industry perspective, from the machine learning perspective, from data science perspective, this chart is very important, guys. So let's get started with the understanding of Boxplot. What is it and why do we use it? Okay, first of all, starting with this, guys. So Boxplot, we have different names to Boxplot, guys. We actually call it as, sometime you will see people are calling it as box and whiskers, right? Plot. There is another name to it and very popular. A lot of time I have seen people ask in the interview rooms, guys, that which chart is your 5-number summary chart, right? 5-number summary chart, right? So these are three different names to the same chart which we are going to discuss, guys. Box plot, box and whiskers plot, and 5-number summary chart or 5-number summary plot. Now, why we call it as 5-number summary? Because it gives you a detail of 5 different numbers, right? Now, what are those 5 numbers, guys? Let me just list them. So first, it talks about the minimum value, right? Then it shows actually first quartile, right? We can say first quartile. I hope you understand quartile. In the last video only we introduced this. Then it tells you about median. Then third quartile. And finally the 5th number it actually give you, that is the maximum value. Okay. Now the maximum value, guys, it's not the actual maximum value of your variable, or the minimum value is not the actual minimum value. Sometimes it's minimum value. Sometimes you will have outliers present in your data. Now there are calculations. That calculations we are going to discuss, guys, right? So now first let's look at the shape, how our box plot looks like. So this is the general shape for box plot. So here at the bottom we have the lower value. Then why we call it as box and whiskers? Because we have box in this and this shape, right? These extended lines, these we call them as whiskers. So that's why sometimes people call it as box and whiskers plot. Now this is just a line. So basically it will connect your lower value to the lower quartile. That is nothing but first quartile, right? So this value will be first quartile. Then there will be a line, guys, right? So that line represents the median. Then upper quartile, this is nothing but third quartile. And finally, you will have the upper extreme. So this is the ideal case where we do not have any outlier, right? So now this is the standard approach. Now, if there are outliers, like the one which I am going to show in my Excel, guys, the selling price, if you remember from the cardeko.com real world data set we have, where we have the second-hand cars related data. And there we have one of the very critical feature about second-hand cars, that's the selling price the cardeko.com is quoting, right? So for that, we will see practically how do we create box plot using Excel. We will see that, right? So using Excel, how do we create it? as well as we will see how these outliers look like. Now, if there are outliers, now guys, how do we calculate outliers? These outliers can be on the upper side as well as on the lower side. So these are lower side on the minimum side. These are towards the maximum side, right? Now, how do we represent that on the histogram, guys? So these outliers means you have outliers on the right hand side, right? So if you remember, this one we call it as right skewed. When you have outlier or extreme values on the right hand side, so this is right skewed distribution. Similarly, if you have outliers, like if we have on the bottom side, so now our outliers or extreme values will be on the left hand side. So now in that particular case, this one is left skewed variable, right? So now this is how we actually find out the outlier information. Okay, so now using this particular data, you can understand, guys, how the distribution will look like. You can make a chart out of it, right? So if we have extreme values on the upper side, then it's a right skewed. If you have outliers on the bottom side or the lower side, then you have left skewed. If we have outliers on both the sides, then in that case, we will have extreme values on both the sides. So tail will be on both sides. Now, it cannot be symmetrical. It may be symmetrical or may not be. That depends on the data. But you will have extreme values on both the sides, right? So these are like, you can imagine how the distribution will look like. Now, the important point is, how do we calculate outlier, guys? So there is a straightforward formula for this. So now what we do, we actually use a formula of, for the upper outliers, right? Upper outlier, we use third quartile, okay, plus 1.5 times IQR. And I am pretty sure you know about IQR, interquartile range. We have discussed that multiple times in our video series, guys. So if you don't know, watch any of the video in my earlier this series, you will find it out, right? So third quartile plus 1.5 into IQR, interquartile range, which is nothing but third quartile minus first quartile, right? So any value in your variable which is having value greater than this, they will be highlighted here as outliers. Okay, like this, like the one I have done. Right. Similarly, on the lower side, if you have outliers, that formula is lower outliers. I'm just giving a name, lower outliers. So that formula is first quartile minus 1.5 times IQR. So that is interquartile range. So now any value which is less than this, then these will be our outliers. Now, after identifying all the outliers, whatever minimum or maximum value you will have, that will be highlighted over here. Okay, so this is very important. So now a lot of people doesn't know about this. So first it identifies the outliers. They will get highlighted over here. Now after that we will start creating our box plot. So now removing our outliers from the data, whatever data or whatever values you will get in your variable, based on that it will find out the minimum value and your upper value, right? And your upper quartile and lower quartile will remain the same, right? So this is how we actually create our box plot. I hope this particular point is clear, guys. And how do we interpret box plot, right? So it's a 5-number summary plot where we have 5 numbers: minimum value, first quartile, median, third quartile, and maximum values. Now, lot of people think, lot of students, they think that it's mean. It's not mean, guys. It's not mean. It's not mean. It's not mean. Remember it. It's actually median. That line you will find in the box, that represents the median value, not the mean value. Okay. Now let's see how do we create the box plot in Excel, guys. And we will be using the same cardeco.com data. Now let's move to the Excel. Okay. So now we have our data, cardeco.com data in our Excel, right? So now, guys, if you know how do we create any chart in Excel, the simplest way is select your column on which you want to create the chart. Then you go to insert. Now you will have all the options for different charts in the insert tab like this. So I am using Excel in the browser. you will have your own desktop system or desktop Excel. You can open that, right? In insert tab itself, you will find all these options, right? So once you have selected your data, you can select any of the column, guys, and then you can create your different charts. Now in this particular case, what do we want to do? We want to create Boxplot, right? So now just go to this. If you have 2013 plus Excel version, then you will have box and whiskers plot available in the insert tab. So now we have this selling price which we have selected. Now if I click on this box and whisker, it will create a box plot chart, guys, like this. Now this is interesting, guys. Just look at this. On the y-axis, we have different values in the selling price variable. On the horizontal, we have written 1. It's nothing but basically always you will get 1. If you have categories, in that case, you will have different values here. But here, it's just a number they have given, right? So now this is how our box plot looks like. So see, we have multiple numbers shown over here. Now, if let's say before going this, I want to change the chart title. I can use box plot for selling price value. Right. So now we have box plot for selling price. That's the title of my chart. Now I want to, rather than having this 10 lakh or I think it's 1 crore, I want to use the Y limit as 90 lakh. In that case, what do we need to do? Just go to your vertical axis. Then you can specify over here 90 lakh. Yes. So now you can see we have changed the Y limit. So that's how you can play around with this box plot. My idea is to show you how do we create it. So this is how our box plot will look like. Now, if you see, we have 5 very important informations, right? Now, if you look at this particular line, guys. So the first line it represents, that is nothing but your minimum value, right? Minimum value in the data, that is 20,000. Now, this particular line, this represents the first quartile. Now, you can see there is a black line in between, right? So this actually represents the median. Now there is a cross symbol as well. If you see that I have selected, that's why we can see that, right? So that cross is nothing but mean, guys. I'll show you how we can actually deactivate or activate this. Yeah, so now you can see on the right hand side, we have show mean marker, right? By default, you will not get in box plot mean, but here in Excel, we have that option that if you want to see the mean where it lies, we know that mean is lying above the median. This is very interesting interpretation, guys. Now, in this particular case, we have here mean. So mean is greater than median. It means that we have extreme values on the upper side or right hand side, right? If you remember or recall your histogram. So that is why we have cross sign greater than, and that is why we can see from the distribution also we have these outliers, right? So these are nothing but outliers or extreme values we have on the upper side or the right side. That's why we have mean greater than median. So it's basically a right skewed variable, guys. This is interesting. Right skewed variable. Now this is the maximum value after eliminating all the outliers, right? And these are the outliers. These outliers are on the upper side. So that is why the formula used to identify the outlier is third quartile plus 1.5 into IQR, interquartile range. So that is the formula used to identify the outliers. And this is very important, guys. Whenever you will go, when we will go to the machine learning or any statistical models like linear regression, logistic regression, we identify outliers. We have to deal or treat them before building our machine learning or statistical models, right? Now, for that purpose, Boxplot is very popular and we extensively used in the industry. So that is why I have created a separate video on Boxplot, guys. And I hope you understood how do we interpret the box plot, why we call it as 5-number summary plot, and how do we create that in Excel for any variable. So you can try it out for any of your data. How do we create box plot? And then you can understand the distribution of the variable, right?